Hi everybody, how you doing today? My name is Nicole Palagano and I am the Director of Personal Counseling here at Bloomfield College. Excuse me, and I've actually been asked to present to you guys today about how to manage your stress. You know, the good news is you're officially college students. The bad news is that with that comes a little bit of stress, and so we want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what stress is, what it looks like, and more importantly, how to cope with it so that you can be successful here. So we're going to get underway and take a look at how to cope with our own stress, okay? The first thing that I want you to think about is what stresses you. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they say, oh, everything stresses me. But really the truth is that not everything is stressful, okay? Every human that walks the face of the earth feels stress. There's no way to live without stress. But it's really defining what's best, what stresses you. So typically when I come into a classroom, I usually like to have all the students get in a circle and we go around the room and we say, okay, tell me one thing that stresses you. And I often hear the same things over and over again. You know, maybe it's schoolwork, money, work, your real job, math, taking exams, whatever it might be. But I do that for a reason. One is because we have to understand that you're not alone when you're stressed, okay? We can often feel isolated when we get lost in our stress, but the truth is you're not. We all go through the same stresses, and that's often helpful. And two, we really have to pinpoint it. When you think in extremes, like I'm always stressed, or everything stresses me, or I'll never not be stressed, that becomes really, really overwhelming. So I just want you to take like 3 seconds right now and think in your mind, one thing, when I say the word stress, what comes to your mind? Okay, you got it? Okay. So now when I want you to think about stress, I want you to know that there's such thing as what we call good stress, okay? And the good stress is called eustress. Okay? Eustress is what motivates us, okay? If we didn't have this good stress, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, frankly, okay? And so the good stress, like when you think about school, oh, I'm stressed about this test, so I'm going to study. That eustress motivates you to study, okay? Oh, I want the new iPhone, the XR, right? So I'm going to work hard to raise money to get that, right? That's all good stress. And a lot of times when we hear the word stress, we only think that it's bad, but when we put this positive connotation on it, it feels differently, okay? So like I said, with that exam. All right, I'm stressed right now, but I'm going to study and it's going to motivate me. And I know that after that exam, that stress will be gone, rather than, oh God, I'm so stressed. It just feels differently. And when we take ownership of the good stress, you are more productive, to be honest with you. And it feels better. It really does. So, you know, embrace the good stress in your life. We experience it every day. And you want to start to see it as a good thing. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the bad stress, also called distress. And just like every human feels the eustress, every human feels distress at times, okay? And this is the opposite. Rather than it motivating us to do something, it inhibits our ability to get things done, okay? So think about a time in your life maybe when you felt so overwhelmed, you had a lot going on and you couldn't do anything, you know? I hear it often in my office as a counselor. I'll hear, oh, you know, there's so much to do, I don't know where to start. Or there was so much to do, I just kind of hid in my bed for the day. And that's okay. Like I said, every human, all of us, we all go through this. But what, as a counselor, what the red flags would be is if it was happening a lot, you know, maybe 3-4 times a month, or worse, 3-4 times a week. That's what we call really red flag distress, and that's what we want to avoid here. So the point of this presentation is to get the wheels turning in your head to start thinking about how you work with the good stress and how you cope with the bad stress, the distress. Makes sense, right? There's been a lot of studies completed when it comes to stress in college students, and so there's been some of these recurring themes. And so everyone in the room right now who's current student, whether you're new from high school or transfer student, you know, you're going to feel some of these stressors. We're all going to feel it on different levels, but all of you should have had some level of stress with these certain themes. So the first one is adjustments, right? This is new. You're new to Bloomfield College, right? And going anywhere new is an adjustment. Okay, and so for some of you that might be a really stressful adjustment, becoming a new student, learning the lay of the land, sort of the Bloomfield College protocol, and some might have just sort of eased in. What I want you to think about is, you know, one, acknowledge that adjusting to college life is a stressor, and two, sort of rating in your head. Is it something that's putting you into stress, like it's so stressful that you're not making it to class, or is it, okay, it's a manageable stress? Okay, and I want you to do that with each of the stressors that we talk about. A next common stressor is this idea of multiple responsibilities, okay? As a college student, you got a lot of balls in the air juggling, okay? So let's just, for example, say you're taking 3 classes. That's 3 balls in the air you're juggling. If you have a job, maybe responsibilities at home, roommate concerns, these are all balls that you're juggling, and it's really can be stressful to go from, not too much going on to having all of these balls. And so I want you to think for a second, how many balls are you juggling? And sometimes we have like heavier balls, right? So maybe the math class is a lot heavier than an art class, or maybe you're really good at math, but the psych class is a struggle for you. We all juggle these balls as college students. These are stressors, but I want you to think about how many you're juggling, okay? Typically when I go into the classroom, someone will say maybe 4 balls, and I've had someone say as high as 16 balls, So if you think about all of your responsibilities, how much of that is a stressor for you? And is it manageable? That's the key, okay? Are there any balls that you can put down? Right? I've worked with students who were working 2 jobs and trying to go to school full time, and we would have to sit there and say, okay, what ball can come down, because there's just not enough hours in the week. And so that's kind of how we want to think. And some are just like, hey, I've got enough, I'm handling it, and that's fantastic. The point of this presentation, you're going to hear me say it a lot, is that I want your wheels turning, thinking about how you manage what you have to manage in the stress in your world. Okay? Another common theme for new college students is what's called the imposter syndrome, okay? And this is like when we get there and we're like, am I supposed to be here? You get that feeling like, wow, I don't know if I'm as smart as she is, or wow, he's really, really good in this, and I don't know that I'm supposed to be here. And it's common. I would bet the farm that everyone in this room has felt that or thought that at some point. But again, it's the degree of which you are at it right now. So is it something you thought the first day and eased right in, or is it something you kind of really struggle with? Should I be here? Is this really for me? Because with that change and adjustment comes that feeling. And so if this is something that's putting you into stress, we want to make sure that you're acknowledging it and saying, okay, is it my fear that I don't belong here, or do I not really belong here? And that's something that we'd want to work through. And incidentally, all of these issues, in counseling, we work with a lot of students concerning these issues. And so we don't expect you to, go figure it out on your own. There's always help and support. One of the best things about being at the college campus. Another common theme is the unknown, okay? What we get most nervous about the future is that we don't have that magic globe that tells us where we're going to be and what we're going to do here. And obviously you all are here because you want to get a college degree and get a good job someday, right? And we get that. And even if you know exactly what you want to do, there's no guarantee that the job's going to be sitting there waiting for you at the end of your time here. And so that can often cause a lot of anxiety or stress for students, and something that we hear a lot in our office. And so what we want to do is make this manageable for you. There are ways that it can become manageable. So for example, do some career exploration, or come up with a career plan during your time here at Bloomfield College to make sure you do internships and network and so forth. And so there's ways to manage that stress. It's not just like, oh, I hope it works out. We can work with you in that as well. And that's something that everybody in this room has in common, is that you guys are all here for your own futures. And none of us have that crystal ball. So it's manageable, definitely manageable. A big component, with college is sort of the friends, trying to possibly make new friends, hold on to old friends. Maybe sometimes we have to let go of old friends if they don't really understand the change that you're going through. It can be very complicated. Human beings, we're innately social beings, and, we need other people in our lives and want that and crave that. And so it's a struggle, and for others, it's not a struggle at all to make a new friend. For somebody, it could be like the worst thing in the world. And so we have to always check in with yourself. What's your level of stress when it comes to this? Is this something that distresses you, where maybe you're avoiding going to class because you don't know how to make a new friend, or maybe you're hanging out with friends too much and you're not going to class. There's different varying levels, but you want to be aware of it. Again, every time you're aware of the stressors in your life, you can cope with them. If you pretend that they don't exist, that's when you're not coping, and that's not good. Okay, that's when you wind up in distress. I have me personally, I've been working in higher ed for almost 20 years, and not once has anyone ever knocked on my door and said, I need to talk to you because I have too much money. As a college student, you're promised two things. You're always going to be tired, you're always going to be broke, right? And so finances are real. And so the biggest stressor that students have is sometimes they put the stress on themselves about finance. I go, I want this and I want that, but I can't because I have to go to class or I have to do this. So for the distract factor, we always want you to put it in perspective. Like, okay, I know you want to go on vacation, but you can't because you can't afford it right now, or you want that new iPhone and so forth. It's kind of putting it into perspective, sort of deciding what you want versus what you need right now, and kind of putting it that temporary, just because your financial situation isn't great right now doesn't mean it's always going to be, and really dealing with that. Again, if it's putting you in distress, if you can't afford to live or eat, then that's a whole nother level, and that's something we'd want you to get help and support with. We could start with counseling definitely for those types of stressors, okay? So don't pretend like it's not real. That's what we're asking you for, is to address it, acknowledge that it is real, and then we cope together. So now that we know what stress is, the typical college student, let's talk about what stress actually looks like. Because sometimes we don't realize that we're in distress. We just kind of figure, this is how life's supposed to be, okay? Or this is just me, or I'm going through a phase. Signs of distress, and again, when I say distress, it means that these things are happening 3-4 times a month, 2-3 times a week, whatever it might be, okay? So let's just say you're having sleeping difficulty, okay? If you didn't get a good night's sleep last night, and that was the first time in a couple months, that doesn't mean you're in distress, it means you had a bad night's sleep. But for the past month, if you haven't had a good night's sleep, 3-4 times, now we're gonna be concerned, okay? A lot of times when we go to bed at night and we try to rest our bodies, we can't rest our minds, right? So sort of these racing thoughts. And that usually is a telltale sign of distress, because that's when our minds kind of go, take away from us. And when we're losing sleep, we're then losing our ability to function because we're tired, or maybe we try to over-caffeinate and then we're not functioning at our best. So when you're truly in distress, you're not functioning at your best possible, possible you, I guess, right? So you're not the best possible student, the best possible worker, the best possible boyfriend, girlfriend, daughter, mother, son, whatever it is. And that's really the true overall side effects of distress. If you have a change in appetite, okay, I've seen a lot of students who come in and they just aren't hungry because they're so distressed. Everything kind of makes them nauseous. On the other end of the spectrum, I've seen, the only thing that brings people comfort is eating and food and overeating. And so, I'm supposed to be doing homework, but I'm going to go to McDonald's instead, even though I just ate breakfast 2 hours ago. And so that's something to be aware of, okay? So if you're doing either one of these, not sleeping, and your appetite has drastically changed, these are going to be signs, red flags, wheels turning, that maybe some extra help and support is needed. If you're someone who worries a lot, that's often a key sign to distress. I hear a lot of times in my office, Nicole, I'm just a worrywart. That's who I am. That's just me. And my response to that is that's not the natural human experience, okay? To live the human experience in constant worry, it's not how it's supposed to be, so to speak. It's what you've lived with, but that means that you haven't been coping with your stress, and it could be sort of sometimes when we worry, we feel comfortable in that worry because we're just used to it, but it's really not a good feeling. When you're worrying all the time, you can't relax and you can't de-stress, and it affects us from being present in the moment, and it affects us from being the best student, the best boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, sister, daughter that we can be. So the folks who kind of just rest in, I worry all the time, you don't have to, okay? You can choose to, but you don't have to. A lot of times when we are feeling in distress, we have physical reactions, okay? Our mind and our body are one. We're one person, and we can't separate them, right? You can't put your body to bed and take your walk for a mind, or your mind for a walk, I should say, right? And so we'll feel maybe a racing heart. This perfect example is, let's just say you have to go give a presentation, a speech, and you're not comfortable public speaking, and you've had to do it. Maybe you might get the sweaty palms and you feel the heart racing a lot, okay? And the minute it's over, you feel better, okay? That's situational anxiety. That's okay. That's very normal. But if you're racing heart every time you have to enter a new building or walk across the quad or, talk to a professor, and that the racing heart is just constantly there. Again, that's not part of the natural human experience. And yes, you might be used to it, used to feeling that way, but that doesn't mean that you have to. So the choice is yours there in saying, okay, maybe I can find some coping skills to get rid of that, okay? Other, sort of physical reactions, I get clenched teeth a lot, jaw hurts. Personal counseling is located next to health services, and I can't tell you how many times students have come in to talk to the nurse, and then the nurse walks them right over to personal counseling because they feel physically unwell. But really what's causing their ailments is stress and anxiety, and so we'll deal with that a lot. Muscle tension is a big one. I tell this story often because it's the one that resonates the most with me. Years ago, I had an adult student who walked around with his shoulders like this, very, very tense. And I didn't know that he was tense, to be honest with you. I didn't know him. I just knew him from a distance, and I just thought that, kind of that macho walk. And one day, sure enough, he knocks on my door and says, "Hey, Nicole, you got a minute? Can I talk?" And I said, "Absolutely, come in." And he sat in my office for 3 hours and told me what was going on. And literally by the end of that session, his shoulders had gone from here down to here. And he was like, holy cow. He's like, I have been to chiropractors and orthopedists. And, he's like, my shoulders haven't, come down in a year. And it was all due to stress, right? So when we feel stressed and isolated and alone, we embrace it, and it takes a physical impact on us. So if you're having an ailment that you can't quite figure, it might be stress-induced. It might be a sign of distress. And then this final sort of sign of distress is one that rings near and dear to my heart, because I think this is the one where college students can hide behind. Remember before I said, as a college student, you're guaranteed to be tired and broke? So a lot of college students hide behind the fact like, oh, I'm so tired because I'm, running all over the place and I didn't sleep last night and this and that and that. And so they can hide behind fatigue and just kind of accept the fact that, oh, I'm a college student, I'm always tired. But there's a difference between being tired and being fatigued, okay? If you're fatigued, you can sleep for 10 hours, wake up, and still not feel well rested, okay? If you're fatigued, you can have a great day but never feel energized, right? And if you're fatigued, your only source of appeasement is like lying down and going to sleep and taking a nap, okay? And that's not what we want, okay? That's a clear sign of distress. And like I said, it happens a lot in college students because they can easily hide. It's not a red flag that we see a lot because it's like, oh, she's tired. She, wrote the paper last night, or, oh, he was out late last night. So it's understandable. So if you never feel relief from a good night's sleep, or, always have to nap and just can't ever feel energized, that's going to be a telltale sign of distress for me. And again, you don't have to live like that. You can choose to kind of get help and find some coping strategies for it. Just to kind of recap a little bit, is the idea is if you really want to cope with your stress, you have to address it. You have to name it. You have to sort of own it and say, okay, I am stressed and I am showing these signs. And you can't just kind of lock yourself in a corner. I often picture people who are really in distress when they isolate themselves. Like, let's just say they hide in their room or their house and don't deal with it. That's like pouring fuel on a fire, When we're really stressed and isolated, it only gets worse by hiding it and avoiding it. And in the moment, we don't think that. We think, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be and this is safe. But I can tell you time and time again, this is when students do this, when they isolate themselves and hide from the world, this is when they start to fail out of college, not do great in classes, start to lose some of their friends. And all those stressors that we talked about before just kind of bubble up, okay? So that's why it's so important that, we're doing this presentation during your first semester here, is so that you understand how important it is not to hide and run from your stress, to acknowledge it, to cope with it, and to come up with a plan, okay? Now, I wish I had a magic wand where I can say, oh, you're stressed, poof. Not anymore, it doesn't really work that way. So we have to kind of work on it. Just like we work on our bodies, to be healthier, we have to work on ourselves to be less stressed and to cope with it, okay? And so here are just some stress management techniques that I have seen work with others and personally with myself as well. As a personal counselor, I'm going to tell you one of the best ways to reduce any stress that you might be feeling is talking to someone, okay? But here's the thing, you have to talk to the right someone, okay? If you don't talk to the right person about whatever it is you're feeling, it can make it worse. Okay. Years ago, I had two sisters who attended college together, and they were in the same classes, pretty much together every day, all day. And the one sister was very relaxed, and she didn't let a lot get her agitated. Whereas the other sister was a type A personality, always, always worried about the next assignment and the next test and everything. And so she would kind of vent to her sister, like, I'm stressed, did you do the homework? And the other sister would be like, yeah, you worry too much. And what wound up happening is that because her stress and anxiety was never validated, she wound up having panic attacks where she couldn't breathe. She'd feel like she's having a heart attack once, 2, 3 times a week. And then eventually came into counseling, and we figured it out that, yes, her sister was a wonderful person and her best friend in the world, but when it came to her school stress, she had to find somebody who was going to hear her out. She had to find someone who's going to be like, yeah, that is a lot. It's okay. Let's find ways for you to get through it. And we do that a lot in life. We're like, oh, I should talk to my mother, boyfriend, friend, because that's who they are and they should listen to me, but they might not always be the support that you need. So always keep that in mind, okay? Talk to the right somebody. Deep breathing exercises often help when you're feeling completely stressed or overwhelmed, mostly because when you stop your body, like I said before, our body and our minds are connected. So if you physically stop your body in the moment, you're being mindful of your body in that moment, and that kind of is sort of like a quick trick to pause your stress and anxiety. And so if you do that multiple times a day, you're kind of hitting pause, and taking control of it on a daily basis. So it's a quick technique, and there's more to it than that, but it's just something to think about. There's lots of folks that I've come across lately who've been doing deep breathing exercises, so that's why it made the list. You definitely want to minimize your exposure to negative people. I usually when I do this in a classroom presentation, I get, yep, a lot of people just kind of nodding their heads, because unfortunately, a lot of us do have what we call sort of toxic people in our life, and people who aren't going to be as supportive as we want or need them to. And so this is an important point in your life where you have to determine who those people are, who's going to build you up rather than tear you down. And it could be difficult because it could be somebody who's been in your life forever. But you really want to start to build a support system, because college is hard and you're going to need all the support that you can get. You don't need anybody pulling you down while you're walking with that heavy backpack to class. So those two kind of go hand in hand in developing a healthy support system. And what I like to say, and what I'm proud to say about working here at Bloomfield College, like even if you struggle to find healthy people in your life, the staff and the faculty and counselors here, they can be your support system. By far and large, they can be your support system, and they have been for countless students. Years ago, I had a student who would come in for counseling, and she would say I was part of her team. She's like, you're part of my team, Nicole, you're part of my team. And I was like, okay, your team for what? And she's like, project graduation, And she had, tutors on campus and counselors and so forth, and it was to give her that support. She did graduate, by the way. Some other techniques, which you probably already do because it's the most common one I hear, listen to music, or I should have added watch Netflix or Hulu or whatever. Get lost in something other than your own reality. Sometimes that escapism is just what we need. Getting a massage, exercising. Again, whenever you sort of release tension in your physical self, it's going to make you feel better emotionally and healthy. Laughing is a key component. Personally, myself, the people in my world who know me the best know that I am a lover of corny jokes. And so whenever my friends and family come across a corny joke, they will quickly text me it. And I can't tell you how many times that's just been like, oh, I'm having a stressful day, and I'll look down at my phone and voila, a corny joke comes my way. And it's so simple, but it's a coping strategy that I use that I didn't even mean to set up, but it's set up and it works. And so if there's something that you love that you want your friends and family to be like, oh, if you see this, text me. It's just kind of a way to give yourself a little push without even realizing it. And then, of course, reading a good book. For those of us readers in there, always a help, good distraction. Okay, a couple more techniques that have come in handy, and again, that I hear a lot in my office, that you want to identify the positives in your life. You know, sometimes we get so bogged down saying this, what we don't have, but rarely take a look at what we do have, okay? And by doing that, and being grateful for it, it changes your perspective and it actually lowers your stress levels. There have been studies that say people who do like a gratitude journal every day, where whether they do it right in the morning or before they go to bed at night, they say one thing that they're grateful about their day, tend to be happier, have less depression and less stress and anxiety. And it doesn't have to be anything grand. It could just be like, oh, I'm grateful that I saw a cute dog on my way to school today, or, you know, I felt the sunshine on my face. It's just things that we acknowledge that sometimes we tend to ignore when we're in that negative mode. Anytime you take care of your body, you know, eating a healthy diet and getting enough sleep is always going to help your mental health. You know, when you take care of your body, you're taking care of your mind, and when you take care of your mind, you're taking care of your body. Like I said, they're not going to separate too much. Don't let the professors get mad at me for this, but it is okay to take a mental health day. Just like if you had a fever, you'd stay in bed all day to tend to your body. Sometimes we need to take that mental health day. We need to kind of shut off and say, you know what, I'm going to take this day for me. It's different from, I can't face the world, I'm going to hide from bed. This is purposeful. This is intentional. This is, I'm going to take care of me today. And I'm just going to kind of veg out and do what I want to do. You can't do it 3 times a week. That's every once in a while, just like every once in a while you physically kind of check out. Same thing, you know, you have to be kind to yourself, okay? The kinder you are to yourself, the better you will be, you know, functioning. I have a lot of students that keep journals. They write down their feelings, and it's an immediate release in how they're feeling and what they're thinking. Helping someone else is often key because it takes the focus off of us, okay? But here's the warning with that. Helping someone else doesn't mean, okay, let me dive into their problems to forget about mine. I'm talking about, you know, simply whatever it can be, whatever the help can be. Oh, you know, so-and-so needs, you know, help with the notes or with this class. Okay, I can do that, you know, or I'm going to talk to them for an hour because they're having a little struggles. You know, it feels good to help other people. And so that's wonderful, but we don't want to get lost in other people. Just simply help, okay? Look for community service events on campus, things like that, where it's taking up a little bit of your time that you're willing to give, but not, you know, overcoming you with responsibility. Lots of students meditate or pray, sort of giving yourself up to a higher being or higher power is often very stress reducing and feels pretty good for those who do it. Not for everybody, but for those who do it is fantastic. And then, of course, visiting, being in the physical presence of family and friends or people who make you feel good, being intentional about that, you know, especially if you're someone who's living on campus and maybe you can't get home or back to friends as often as you want, you know, making a plan to, you know, saying, okay, I know in 2 weeks I'm going to go see them and it's going to be better. Again, being purposeful, not just saying, I don't know when I'm going to see them, you know. That's the whole key really to sort of stress reduction is when you're purposeful and you address it instead of trying to hide from it and feel yucky, it feels different and it feels better. So with all of these, I know I'm giving you a lot of information here. Remember I said I wish I had that magic wand before to reduce stress? Well, I don't. And with that, it kind of gets even more complicated. There's no one coping strategy that works for everyone for every time. So it's not like, oh, I feel stressed today, I'm going to listen to music and that's going to get rid of my stress. You know, some days it will work, some days it won't. Some days you might have to rely on other things, right? Or like talking to friends or talking to a counselor or whatever it might be. So you kind of just have to be patient and figure it out. I often talk, when I work with students, we talk about building a toolkit, right? And in that toolkit are all these coping strategies. And some days, you know, this tool might work and this tool might not, you know, but the goal is to build that toolkit, to have enough to pull out of that box, that metaphorical box, so that, you know, you're well armed. Okay, and those are the folks who cope the best with their stress. Is that when they have sort of these pre-thought out ways to cope with their stress, and then whatever hits them, they're like, okay, I got this. So that's really the key. And one of the things that, you know, you'll want to start to recognize is that even if you can't change the world or the people in the world, you can definitely change how you view them. My best example was years ago. I had a student come in and she really struggled with her father, and for lack of a better description, her dad wasn't really great at being a dad. but he was in her life nonetheless, and he chose to just be really negative all the time, and would be more of a challenge than a support, one of those toxic people, if you will. But alas, he lived with her, she lived with him, she didn't have much of a choice at the time. And so what we really focused on was, instead of wishing he were somebody else, instead of feeling badly about, him not being the dad you want him to be, let's, kind of accept who he is and how you can deal with it and how you can change, so almost be prepared that, he's not going to give you love and support, but you sort of expect that, okay, he's going to say this or do this, And it took a minute, I'm not going to lie, but when she was kind of able to accept that she couldn't change him, that she can only sort of accept who he was for who he was, that's when the real change happened in her. That's when her own stress levels went down, the way she thought about herself felt better, and just her being able to really cope. Her grades shot up, her social skills shot up. I mean, it impacted everything, and it was really coming down to that, seeing the person for who they were, not trying to change them, but trying to change her. And it's kind of sort of the secret to life. When we when we focus on ourselves and what we can change, that's when we really feel better. Okay, so with that, I give the final commercial for personal counseling. So in the personal counseling office, there is me, Nicole, and the other personal counselor, Krista Dobson. And honestly, our jobs are pretty simple. We're here for all students, okay? Anybody who wants to talk. What's going to separate personal counseling from anybody else on campus are two very important things. The first is that we're confidential, okay? In order for us to hold our licenses, we are not allowed to tell anybody anything about what is discussed in our office. There's a couple exceptions to those, but for the most part, 99.9% of the times, it's going to stay within our office. And so we don't really get that in life. We don't get that guarantee from our friends and our families and our faculty members and everything else that it's, private. It's not going to go on social media at all, guaranteed, and so just in having that privacy is a real treat. And the second thing is that we're safe. And what I mean by that is that as trained counselors, we're trained listeners, and we're never going to judge or say you shouldn't have done that, or what the heck were you thinking? We're really just here to listen, for you to be able to say whatever is on your mind, what you're going through, what you're feeling, and then for us to work together to kind of get you to feel better, right? And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but that's really our end goal. And again, that's going to make us different from anybody else on campus, because that's our primary focus, okay? And for better or for worse, the secret is out on counseling, and so our office is used quite frequently, and we love that. But if you think that you'd be the only one coming up, you'd be sorely mistaken. So we just want you to know that you're welcome to call on us at any time. The best way to get in touch with us is through email, only because our office doors are often closed when we come in with a student. Because of that safe and confidentiality, we'll always be behind closed doors. And so you're welcome to walk up, but if the doors are closed, you'd have to come back. So through email is primarily the best way to reach out to us. And, we'll get back to you within the day, and we go from there. It's that simple. Now, of course, if you're ever feeling stressed and overwhelmed, you want to walk up, of course, and, need to talk in that moment, you knock on our door and we figure that out. But I highly recommend it. As I said, as a counselor, I'm a big proponent of it. And I would hope that you would too. If you're ever feeling those moments of distress and having all of those red flags that we kind of talked about, you'd be open to coming to a counselor and sort of starting the best way to cope with your stress. And with that, I wish you all the best of luck. Have a great rest of your semester, and we'll see you around.